The realities, Black prosperity and oppression during the Great Depression. Peace and love. Welcome back to The Hope, helping our people elevate. Today we're diving into a pivotal chapter in history, the Great Depression, from 1929 to 1939. But before we begin, I have one question for you. What's so great about depression? This era was marked by widespread poverty, unemployment, and hardship. Yet it's called great. Why? We're about to explore the causes, the impact, and the lessons learned from this dark period in history. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe and stay informed on important historical topics. If you find this video valuable, hit that like button and join the conversation by leaving a comment below. Did you already know about the Great Depression, or are you learning something new today? Let's discuss, learn, and elevate together. Let's get into it.
On behalf of Akuno Sankofa Bay, you know what I'm saying? Jay, where you at? We're trying to help our people elevate. Hope. H-O-P-E. We're giving them hope. We doing what we gotta do, you know? Every day, one step at a time, man. We're gonna make it happen. Helping our people elevate. Sometimes I practice focus, thought, and meditate. I'm trying to come with other ways to help our people elevate. And seeking knowledge make me levitate. The lifted mental state is what results from how we orchestrate. This for the family's sake. Let's self-reflect and self-evaluate. And every day make sure the steps you take, you calculate. Receive a master's fate. I know I can't exist without the hate, but that's okay. I balance that with higher self today. Success is on this way, and after that my flesh can pass away.
The Great Depression was the worst economic crisis in modern history, lasting from 1929 until the beginning of World War II in 1939. The causes of the Great Depression included slowing consumer demands, mounting consumer debt, decreasing industrial production, and the rapid and reckless expansion in the U.S. stock market. When the stock market crashed in October 1929, it triggered a crisis in the international economy, which was linked via the gold standard. A rash of bank failures followed in 1930, and as the Dust Bowl increased, the numbers of farm foreclosures unemployed topped 20% by 1933. President Herbert Hoover and Franklin D. Roosevelt tried to stimulate the economy with a range of incentives, including Roosevelt's New Deal programs, but ultimately, it took the manufacturing production increase of World War II to end the Great Depression. What caused the Great Depression? Throughout the 1920s, the U.S. economy expanded rapidly, and the nation's total wealth more than doubled between 1920 and 1929, a period dubbed the Roaring Twenties. The stock market centered at the New York Stock Exchange on Wall Street, New York City, was the scene of reckless speculations where everyone from millionaire tycoons to cooks and janitors poured their savings into stocks. As a result, the stock market underwent rapid expansion, reaching its peak in August of 1929. By then, production was already declined and unemployment had risen, leaving stock prices much higher than their actual value. Additionally, wages at the time were low, consumer debt was proliferating, the agriculture sector of the economy was struggling due to the drought and falling food prices, and banks had an excess of large loans that could not be liquidated. The American economy entered a mild recession during the summer of 1929 as consumer spending slowed and unsold goods began to pile up, which in turn slowed factory production. Nevertheless, stock prices continued to rise, and by the fall of that year had reached stratospheric levels that could not be justified by expected future earnings. The stock market crashed in 1929. On October 24, 1929, as nervous investors began selling overpriced shares in Mesa, the stock market crashed that had some feared happened at last. A record 12.9 million shares were traded that day, known as Black Thursday. 5 days later, on October 29th, or Black Tuesday, some 16 million shares were traded after another wave of panic swept Wall Street. Millions of shares ended up worthless, and those investors who had bought stock on margin with borrowed money were wiped out completely. As consumer confidence vanished in the wake of the stock market crash, the downturn in spending and investing led factories and other businesses to slow down production and begin firing their workers. For those who were lucky enough to remain employed, wages fell and buying power decreased. Many Americans forced to borrow on credit fell into debt, and the number of foreclosures and repossessions climbed steadily. The global adherence to the gold standard, which joined countries around the world in fixed currency exchange, helped spread economic woes for the United States throughout the world, especially in Europe. Banks run in the Hoover administration. Despite assurances from President Herbert Hoover and other leaders that the crisis would run its course, matters continued to get worse over the next 3 years. By 1930, 4 million Americans looking for work could not find it. That number had risen to 6 million in 1931. Meanwhile, the country's industrial production had dropped by half. Bread lines, soup kitchens, and rising numbers of homeless people became more and more common in America's towns and cities. Farmers couldn't afford to harvest their crops and were forced to leave them rotting in the field while people elsewhere starved. In 1930, severe droughts in the southern plains brought high winds and dust from Texas to Nebraska, killing people's livestock and crops. The Dust Bowl inspired a mass migration of people from farmland to cities in search of work. In the fall of 1930, the first of four wave of banking panics began as large numbers of investors lost confidence in the solvency of their banks and demanded deposits in cash, forcing banks to liquidate loans in order to supplement their insufficient cash reserves on hand. Bank runs swept the United States again in the spring and fall of 1931, the fall of 1932, and by the early 1933, thousands of banks had closed their doors. In the face of this dire situation, Hoover's administration tried supporting failing banks and other institutions with government loans. The idea was that the banks in turn would loan to businesses which would be able to hire back their employees.
This was the start of the New Deal.
The New Deal is a series of initiatives that imparted a much greater degree of security and safety and stability to American life in all kinds of sectors, in the banking sector, investment sector, home building, home owning sectors, employment, and so on.
Among the programs and institutions of the New Deal that aided in the recovery of the Great Depression was the Tennessee Valley Authority. TVA, which built dams and hydroelectric projects to control flooding and provide electric power to impoverished Tennessee Valley region, and the Works Progress Administration, WPA, a permanent job program that employed 8.5 million people from 1935 to 1943. When the Great Depression began, the United States was the only industrialized country in the world without some form of unemployment insurance or Social Security. In 1935, Congress passed the Social Security Act, which for the first time provided Americans with unemployment, disability, and pensions for old age. After showing early signs of recovery in the beginning of the spring of 1933, the economy continued to improve throughout the next 3 years, during which the real GDP, adjusted for inflation, grew to an average rate of 9% per year. A sharp recession hit in 1937, caused in part by the Federal Reserve's decision to increase its requirements for money in reserve. Though the economy began to improve again in 1938, the second severe contraction reversed many of the gains in production and employment and prolonged the effects of the Great Depression through the end of the decade. Depression-era hardship fueled the rise of the extremist political movements in various European countries, most notably that of Adolf Hitler's Nazi regime in Germany. Germany's aggression led war to break out in Europe in 1939, and the WPA turned its attention to strengthening the military infrastructure of the United States, even as the country maintained its neutrality. African Americans in the Great Depression. 1/5 of all Americans receiving federal relief during the Great Depression were Black, most in the rural South. Both farms and domestic work, two major sectors in which Black workers were employed, were not included in the 1935 Social Security Act, meaning there was no safety net in the times of uncertainty. Rather than fire domestic help, private employees could simply pay them less without legal repercussions. And those relief programs for which African Americans were eligible on paper were rife with discrimination in practice, since all relief programs were administered locally. Great Depression ends and World War II begins. With Roosevelt's decision to support Britain and France in the struggle against Germany and the other Axis powers, defense manufacturing geared up, producing more and more private sector jobs. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941 led to America's entry into World War II, and the nation's factories went back into full production mode. This expanding industrial production, as well as the widespread conscription beginning in 1942, reduced the unemployment rate to below its pre-depression level. The Great Depression had ended at last, and the United States turned its attention to the global conflict of World War II. Thank you for watching this video on the Great Depression and its impact on Black communities. I truly appreciate you taking the time to learn about this important chapter in history. By understanding the struggle and triumphs of the past, we can better shape our future. If you made it this far, you are a part of the change. Your willingness to learn and reflect keeps these stories alive. If you found this video valuable, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to continue elevating with us. Let's keep this conversation going. Drop a comment below your thoughts, questions, or reflections. How does this history resonate with you today? Peace and love, family. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep helping our people elevate.